Greetings ladies and gents, welcome back to the Craft Hammer. I'm your host Stefan, and in today's video we are going back to our tutorials, which if you are curious, do make sure to check the channel out. We do have a playlist for the basics of how to do a lot of common hobby things within Warhammer, and of course there's a nice big playlist for you to go through. But in today's video we are slightly changing it up and we are looking at a resin model, and specifically we are going to Necromunda with Lady Hera. As I was building the Necromunda Spire Hunters for another video series, if you want to also check those out, go for it. I should have a playlist for Necromunda kit reviews. I realized that I didn't actually have any tutorial video showing the best way and the tips that you need when you're building a resin model, which is different than plastic. So there are a few things that you will need to know before you're going into this, just because there are a few little things that you can't do the same as if it was a plastic model. Now, for those of you who are wondering, we are going to swap out the spear that Lady Hera comes out with, because it does seem very thin when it comes to the actual shaft of the polearm. So we're going to swap it out for this other resin one that we have, and because of that we will also show you how we will do some pinning so that this is able to be secure on the arm itself. And before we go any further, we will be changing out the glue from plastic cement, which is made obviously to melt the actual plastic models together. When it comes to gluing, we will be going for super glue, since this does not, like the actual plastic cement, does absolutely nothing when it comes to resin. Now, our first thing that we're going to be doing for this tutorial is teaching you how to wash a model. This is not necessary for plastic models, even though some people try and argue that it is. It really isn't. But when it comes to resin models, you have to be aware that it is kind of similar to baking. When you're baking, you sometimes put butter around the pan so that the actual baked good doesn't stick to the pan. Well, they do the exact same thing with this model. They put a release agent around the mold that they create the actual model in, so that it's not sticking to the mold itself. And then when it comes out, you will have that's like resin on top of the model, which when you try to paint on it, your paint will simply slide off. That release agent is obviously slippy so that the mold does not stick to the model, and you want to get that washed off. We will be getting hot water, not hot enough that it starts to melt. So if you're looking at boiling water, your model itself will start losing its rigidity and things will start to bend without you even touching them. There is a middle point where, let's say this sword was actually bendy and we want to straighten it up. We do want to get it hot enough that it's not boiling, but it's able to actually straighten out the piece itself. But we are going to go a tiny bit cooler than that, because we don't want to be able to bend anything. We just want to have, let's say you're washing your dishes and the water is hot, but it's not like so hot that it's burning your skin. We want fairly like warm water so that we can put some dish soap, which is important. Dish soap really helps get rid of the release agent, and we do need to make sure that we're scrubbing it clean, maybe with a toothbrush, and getting rid of all that release agent, because otherwise we won't be able to even glue. Sometimes the release agent can also affect your glue, and of course it will definitely affect your primer. So we're gonna get this washed, and then we'll come back and look at some of the gluing aspect, which isn't like the most difficult aspect when it comes to this. Super glue really works fine. So first and foremost, let's go and get this washed. And we are back with the model that has been fully washed in dishwasher soap, and we did leave it to dry overnight, and of course patted down some of the bigger pools of water to make sure that it is as dry as possible. I have, of course, glued some of the things together just to kind of get them out of the way, and we're going to discuss some of the important parts that you need to kind of worry about and also be aware when you're doing resin. Unlike plastic, it does have a few tidbits that you have to worry about when you're building it together, because they will, I guess, damage a bit easier and you might run into a few issues now and again. The first and foremost that we're going to talk about is making sure that it is stable and secure to the actual base that you are using. And what we did in this scenario is pinning. For those of you who are unaware what pinning is, you get a trusty old paper clip, you get a hand drill, and then the two parts that you want to glue together. For example, the feet. What we did is we found the thickest part of the foot, which in this case, because of the design, is actually quite a small section. You drill into the foot itself, and then you put in and glue in one of these paper clips into that hole. Once it's dry, you snip it to a certain length. In this case, we kind of did it about here, and then you drill into the base itself, after which you put extra glue onto those pins, you put it on top of the base, and we have a much more stable platform, and hopefully it won't be snapping off anytime soon. That is kind of like the basic thing when it comes to pinning, that you drill into the thickest part of the resin and then you glue it in, and then you're able to connect two pieces together. This is where we're going to talk about the difference between resin and plastic. Both of those materials, they catch much easier, and what that means is that when you are either cleaning it and scraping off mold lines, or when you are drilling, the knife or the drill doesn't perfectly go in one direction. Like, it doesn't perfectly drill, straight down into it. Because of the material and the way it is, you might start to slip and it gets caught in a different direction. And of course, with enough pressure and enough force from your knife as well, it does the same thing. It might go deeper than you were expecting when you were trying to scrape part of the, excess flash, etc. And a perfect example is right here on this claw at the very tip. If we show you the other version, as you can see, there is a tiny bit of the tip that is missing, because as I was cleaning, I accidentally went and nicked inside the claw, and of course I was like, okay, let me put a bit of super glue and kind of push it back up, and once I did that, the other part snapped. So then the tip of the claw has now fallen off. Unfortunately, I can't really do anything about it, so it's gonna have to be a weapon with the claw kind of missing. Hopefully it won't stand out too much. But on the same note, as I was mentioning, the spear, the original one, was far too thin, and we can still see the back end here, because unfortunately the actual shaft here on the other side is far too thin, and I even got a thinner drill bit than this, and I tried to go in, but it kept catching and making the direction slide away from the actual center point, so I was unable to actually put a pin in this section. That is something that you will have to come across. Unfortunately, in this scenario, I'm not able to change this out even more, because this has already been pinned in, but also I just haven't been able to actually drill in this section. I was thinking maybe I should drill it from this side, from the end, but I do believe that might make it look slightly stranger than it already is. So I think in this scenario, I'm just gonna have a very shortened, I guess, spear staff, slightly like a sword, and we're just gonna have to deal with it this way. This section was pretty nice when it came to actually drilling it. Similar to the actual legs, you drill in, you get your pin, you glue it in, and then you're able to connect two sections with a much more stronger point here that won't break as easily if you are just keeping it as is. Now what I'm gonna do is put the rest of these little pieces on it and see how all of these arms come together and get the model finished, and then we'll come back with a super quick review on how this model was when I was building it. So give me 2 minutes and I'll be back in a second. And we have returned with the completed model in all of its glory, which is a pretty nice overall stance and a pretty decent design. I have to say, this time when I've been building this resin, I haven't found any bad like gaps in between any of these little pieces, so it's definitely an upside compared to some of the older resin models that I've built before that had some very bad gaps where I've needed to put some green stuff. But this one, overall, all the pieces went pretty nicely and fit snugly together, and there hasn't been any issues when it came to the building, apart from my scalpel obviously nicking the point on the claw there. Now, design wise, if you happen to have seen my previous videos on the Spire Hunters and the models that I built from those two little boxes, I did mention that I much prefer when a model has both feet planted on the ground, as most poses that are one-footed or like trying to jump in a scenario or landing generally don't look that great because motion doesn't always get captured properly when it comes to a model. So I much prefer a nice aggressive stance that is using both feet on the ground. The spear also turned out pretty decent, even though it's not like perfectly straight. It does seem like it's part of the model. It's not too out of place, even though you might see, and you can see like that there should have been a much longer staff here, but I think that overall it still kind of works, and it seems like it's a spear slash sword, so it's not too bad the way it is there. And one of the things that I mentioned in my previous video was that I wish some of the other Spire Hunters had like a small little pistol cannon similar to the Predator from Alien vs Predator, and then here we do see that this model itself does have these interesting little cannons, except these ones are fairly large, so I think it works for this one since they are a special character, which is Lady Hera. But I do think for some of the other ones, something that's a bit smaller and not as huge as these ones. But overall, I am quite happy with the design and the weapons that you receive on this model. Another thing that I noticed and I realized that I also see on the other models is that they actually have their legs amputated. So from here it is all metallic and it's part of the hunting rig, so there isn't actually any human parts in this section. So for them to fit in these rigs, they actually do seem to amputate the bottom of their legs, which is very interesting to see. Overall, quite happy, and I'm looking forward to getting all of the Spire Hunters primed, get them all nice done up, and then I'll have to figure out what exactly I'm gonna paint these as. So for now, I hope you found this tutorial useful. I hope you enjoyed the little review for this kit, and we're gonna do some more kit reviews coming up in the future. I think the Ash Waste Nomads will be next, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, it really helps us out. Make sure to drop your comments and your likes down below, and don't forget to check out some of our other playlists for the videos on the channel. And until next time, take care folks.